There are 10 crops my people grew up in these mountains that saved them more money than a bank ever did. 10 plants that stood between a family and an empty table through the hardest winters this country has ever seen. And the last one, the one my grandmother called the plant that would outlast a depression, saved them more than the other 9 put together. We will get to that one, because once you know what it is, you will never look at your grocery bill the same way again. But first, the other 9, because every single one of these is cheap to plant, easy to grow, and worth more on your table than anything you can push a cart past at the store. And most folks today are not growing a one of them. You have probably stood in the checkout line watching the total climb, wondering how a few bags of groceries got so dear. And in the next few minutes, I am going to walk you through the 10 crops my people leaned on to feed themselves through hard times, saving the biggest one for last. So stay with me all the way to number 1, because that is the one that changes everything. Let's start the count. Number 10, the humble winter squash. Now I know a squash does not sound like much, but hear me out, because this is where the mountain thinking starts. A single squash vine will sprawl out and give you a whole armload of big heavy squash off one seed. And here is the part that mattered to my people. You do not have to eat them right away, and you do not have to can them. A winter squash set in a cool, dry corner of the cellar will keep for months. All winter, sometimes clear into spring. So you grow a pile of them in the summer for pennies, and you're still eating homegrown food in February, when the store wants a small fortune for a sorry-looking vegetable trucked in from 1,000 miles away. That is free food in the dead of winter, and that is only number 10. Number 9 is one you would never expect to see on a list about saving money, and that is exactly why I put it here: herbs. Now stay with me. Walk into any store and look at what they charge you for a tiny plastic clamshell of fresh basil, or a sad little bundle of parsley that wilts in 3 days. It is highway robbery. But an herb is just about the easiest thing on this earth to grow, in a pot on the step, in a corner of the bed, anywhere. Plant it once, and many of them come back on their own year after year. My grandmother had her herbs by the kitchen door and never paid a nickel for seasoning in her life. Pennies of seed replacing some of the most overpriced green in the whole store. But a squash and a handful of herbs are just the warm-up, because the next one fed entire families straight through the winter. Number 8, dried beans. Not the green beans you eat fresh, but the beans you let dry hard right there on the vine. The shuck beans and the soup beans my people lived on. Here is why they matter more than almost anything. A patch of dry beans gives you pure, storable protein, the kind of thing that is expensive to buy and that keeps a working body going. And once they are dry, they last for years in a jar on the shelf. No canning, no freezing, no electricity, nothing. Just beans in a jar, waiting. In these mountains, a good bean crop was the difference between a hungry winter and a full one, and it cost next to nothing to grow. But if beans were the backbone of the mountain table, the next crop was the workhorse. Number 7, the potato. There is a reason whole nations have leaned on this humble root. An ordinary patch of ground will give you a mountain of potatoes, more calories of real filling food per foot of garden than almost anything else you can plant. They are cheap to start, they practically grow themselves, and dug up and stored in a cool, dark cellar, they will feed you for months. My people could grow a winter's worth of potatoes in a small patch and never go hungry. Now, a lot of folks think you need frost to make the next one sweet, and that is dead wrong, but we will get to that, because number 6 is the one that surprises everybody. Number 6, onions and garlic. I put these together because my people use them the same way, and because most gardeners overlook just how much money they quietly save. Think about it. You put garlic or onion in nearly everything you cook, and the store knows it and charges you accordingly week after week, year after year. But a single clove of garlic pushed in the ground in the fall becomes a whole head by summer. One onion set becomes a big onion, and both of them, cured and hung up dry, keep for months and months. It is one of the best trades in the whole garden. A handful of sets for a whole year of flavor you would otherwise buy over and over. And we are only halfway, because the top 5 is where the real money hides, starting with a crop most people throw away half of. Number 5, leafy greens. Lettuce, kale, collards, the mountain staples. Here is the money secret my grandmother knew that most people never learn. With many of these greens, you do not pull up the whole plant. You just pick the outer leaves and the plant keeps right on growing you more, week after week after week from a single planting. One little packet of seed becomes months of salads and pots of greens. And the hardy ones, the kale and the collards, they laugh at the frost. They will feed you deep into the cold when the garden is otherwise bare. Compare that to paying several dollars for a bag of lettuce that turns to slime in a week. It is not even close. But greens keep you fed for a season. The next crop keeps you fed and paid for years. Number 4, berries and small fruit. Now here's where my people got clever. Everything so far you plant every year. But a berry bush you plant one time and it gives back for decades. A few raspberry canes, a blackberry bramble, a couple of blueberry bushes put in once and tended a little will pour out buckets of fruit every single summer for as long as you live on that land. And fresh berries at the store are one of the most expensive things in the whole produce aisle, so you are replacing the priciest fruit there is with a bush that keeps giving free year after year, long after you have forgotten what you paid for it. That is the mountain way, planting something once that feeds your grandchildren. And that same idea, planted once and giving for a lifetime, is exactly what makes the top 3 so powerful. Number 3, fruit and nut trees. If a berry bush pays you back for decades, a tree pays you back for a lifetime, and then keeps paying your children. An apple tree, a pear, a good nut tree, planted by a grandfather, feeds a family long after he is gone. My people understood that a tree was a gift to the future. It asks almost nothing once it is established, and every fall it drops a harvest of food that would cost you a small fortune to buy. There is an old saying that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is today. But even a tree full of apples was not the most valuable thing in my grandmother's garden. The top 2 are. Number 2, tomatoes. Now this might surprise you at number 2, but let me tell you why my people prize them so. A tomato is one of the few things that saves you money twice. First, in the summer, when a handful of plants gives you more tomatoes than you could ever eat fresh, replacing the ones the store charges dearly for. But second, and this is the real trick, you take that flood of summer tomatoes and you can them. Jars and jars of them. And all winter long, when a fresh tomato at the store costs a fortune and tastes like nothing, you are pulling your own canned tomatoes off the shelf for soups and sauces and stews. One summer's work and a few plants feeding you red, ripe flavor all the way through the cold. That is why the tomato earned its place near the very top of the mountain table. And now, number 1, the crop my grandmother called the plant that would outlast a depression. The one that saved my people more than any other thing they grew. It is the sweet potato. Now let me tell you why this one sits at the very top, above all the rest. The sweet potato is pound for pound one of the most productive, most nourishing, most forgiving crops a family can grow. A small patch of ground, some poor dirt most other crops would sulk in, will give you an enormous harvest of them. They shrug off heat and hard times that would wither a regular garden. And then, cured right and tucked into a cool, dark corner, they store for months and months without a lick of electricity, growing sweeter the longer they sit. Think about what that meant to a mountain family. A crop that grows big in poor ground, survives the worst weather, feeds you deep, and keeps all winter on a shelf. That is not just a vegetable. That is security you can hold in your two hands. That is why my grandmother swore by it above everything else, and why it earns the #1 spot on this list without any argument at all. And that right there is the whole thing my people understood. 10 crops, cheap to plant, easy to grow, that fed a family through the leanest winters this land has ever seen, and that most folks today have plumb forgotten how to lean on. So here is where you start. You do not have to plant all 10 this year. Start with just 2 or 3 that would save your own family the most. If you buy a lot of tomatoes, start there and learn to can them. If your grocery bill is all potatoes and onions, put in a patch this spring. And if you do one thing that your grandchildren will thank you for, plant a tree or a berry bush this season. Something that will feed your family for the next 30 years. So let me leave you with what my people left me. Squash and beans and potatoes for the cellar. Herbs and onions and greens by the door. Berries and trees for the years to come. Tomatoes for the winter jars, and the mighty sweet potato above them all. 10 humble crops that outlasted hard times, saved more than money, and asked for nothing but a little ground and a little care. They told you the only way to fill your table is to fill a grocery cart. My people knew better. The richest table in the holler was the one grown right out back. If this opened your eyes, do 2 things. Subscribe, because every week we dig up another piece of the old knowledge they hoped we would forget. And this spring, pick just one of these 10 and put it in the ground. That is how it starts. The mountains fed themselves for generations. Now you can too.